Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to the Higher Institutions Football League Masterclass 3.0. It's the third edition, and we're so proud to be your host for this year's edition. It's a fully packed edition. It's better, it's bigger, and of course, it's more fun. I'm Chidibere Anugulu, the communism of sports. I'm a sport broadcaster with Cool FM Nigeria and Nigeria Info FM, and also Wazobia TV. I'm also an international award-winning journalist with the International Sport Press Association for my reports on a stranded chess master. And well, I'm just proud to be able to host the High Institutions Football League Masterclass 3.0 this year. And well, it was such a big honor. And when I saw the list of facilitators and speakers we've got on board, there was was an easy decision. And today we're kicking it off. We're going to make it interactive, short, and sexy as too. And today we're kicking off with a big man in the sport industry, one who's worked with Super Eagles stars, someone whose face you're probably familiar with. He's been here a few times. He's been here in perhaps all the sessions of the High Institution Football League Masterclass. So we've got Dr. T. Akinbinu. You'll hear from him in a bit. But I'll give you a background of what the High Institution Football League is about. So the High Institution Football League is known as HiFL for short. It's an annual football competition designed for high institutions in Nigeria, particularly universities, to showcase campus football talent. In 2018, 16 top Nigerian universities across 16 major cities played host to 30 games over a period of 14 weeks, including the final and the third place, which was held at the Lagos Agege Stadium. And UAM Tailors emerged as champions for that edition. Also, in the 2019 season, the competition was expanded to include 32 universities, playing 66 games over 21 weeks to determine the winner of the Ultimate Champions Trophy. This season ran between April to October in 2019, and that was the second edition. In 2021, 12 institutions emerged victorious after the qualifiers to merge with the already selected Super 4 teams with an automatic pass during the 2019 season. The Super 4 teams for the 2021 edition included the likes of Footmina Transformers, who played against UNN Lions. We also had AAU Luminaries versus Unimade Warriors. So it's been a long journey. Unimade Warriors won the 2021 season, and of course was a big progress for them. And we're excited for this year's edition of the High Institution Football League when the action starts. But for now, the action starts with the learning, with the fun here on a virtual space. And like I said, we've got some fantastic individuals who have edged their niche in the world of sports in Nigeria and internationally. And we've got Dr. T here. But before we get into all the juicy parts, let's go on a break for the HiFL High Institution Football League's Masterclass Season 3.0. Let's go on that break. When we come back, we'll just dive straight into the got Dr. T, and he's ready. And today we'll be looking at mental health in sports. And for all of the athletes who are joining us, and even the non-sport people, or even those who do sport recreationally, we're time to learn how mental health can be a thing in sport as well. It's a thing in life. It's also a thing in sport. Let's go on that break. We'll be right back. So welcome back. I'm Chidibere Anugulu again, the communism of sports. I'm your host for this year's edition, the Masterclass 3.0. And let's not take any much time. We're going to make this very conversational to get you involved and to get your questions to Dr. T. But we all know that sports, different kind of sports, are great for our physical health. However, very little is said about the negative effects of sports on mental health. Dr. Tunde Akinbinu, a member of the Nigerian Football Federation, the NFF, the body that handles football in Nigeria, is in the sports medical committee of the Nigerian Football Federation. He will join us, or he's joining us already, Shout out to you, Dr. T, who will elaborate on the positives and negatives effects that sports can have on psychology of athletes and how to handle mental issues associated with sports. Welcome, Dr. T. It's a pleasure having you on another edition of the Masterclass series here in HiFL. Good to have you again.
The honor is mine. Good afternoon to all our viewers and listeners around the world. And of course, it's a honor to be a guest on this session and to join the rest of the panelists that we're going to have through the course of the week to dissect various issues as related to young people and of course the beautiful game of football. And let's enjoy this evening.
All right, thank you, Dr. T. He's known as Dr. T for short, and he's loaded, trust me. And it was such a pleasure meeting you just right before we kicked off. Well, we can't forget to give a great shout out and thank you to all our sponsors who are making the HiFL possible. Stanbic Bank, who has stood strong with the HiFL for years now. Bold, the drink, refreshing, the High Institutions Football League, and Hivas as well. And not forgetting Nuga and well, you know, all the authorities who, of course, are in charge of sports in Nigeria. Dr. T. Akinbinu, it's good to have you. Let's go straight to it. You know, sure, for everyone who is watching, they'd like to know, there are lots of misconceptions about mental health, but I'm sure they really want to know first of what is, what are we talking about when we talk about mental health? And there are a lot of misconceptions about mental health, and what are the basic things people should know about mental health? But first, you can maybe define, you know, what the whole conversation about mental health is for those who are just hearing the term for the first time.
All right, that's fine. I think that mental health is a subject that we are happy. I mean, my correct name is Dr. Babatunde Akinbinu. I know you pronounced it quite wrongly. And of course, a number of people just feel very comfortable just saying Dr. T. All right, and I'm a public health physician. I do a lot of sports and exercise medicine, and that all that comes with it. Of course, I'm also sports and health and safety consultant for HiFL, and I'm excited to do this. Now, in the immediate past years, good for all of us in the medical and health industry, there's been a lot of conversation, especially from young people, about mental health. So this definition is the World Health Organization definition of mental health, and it will define the entirety of all that we're going to talk about this afternoon. So mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own potential. That is, that person does know and realize his or her capacity, can cope with the normal stress of life. Life is full of ups and downs, vicissitude is a big word, and can contribute productively and fruitfully, and is also able to make contributions to his or her society. So there are 4 legs to that part. The individual is aware of himself or herself and what he or she can do, can cope with the normal stresses of life, very importantly, and can contribute productively and fruitfully to the development of his or her society, very important. So now, a lot of people think that when you talk about mental health, you're talking about mental illness and all that. Now, there are about 7.88 billion people on Earth, and the World Health Organization states that the data from the WHO is that about 450 million people in the world, that's about 1/16 of the population or thereabout, have one form of mental health disorder or the other, and that 25% of the inhabitants of the world right now who have some form of mental illness at one point in time of their life or the other. What that suggests is that mental health is a spectrum. It goes from full mental well-being without any mental health illness or challenges to severe mental disorder. So you are going from, it's a spectrum. It's a number of things between A and Z. So you are looking at mental health, all that mental health is associated with is all the content of B to Y. So you could have a transient mental health illness, and then you could have a severe mental disorder. You know, so it's
just to jump in, Dr. T, just in a layman's understanding, I mean, I really wish I wanted to do medicine in school, but I couldn't. I didn't have the head for medicine. But in a layman's understanding, you know, I want to, like, you gave a fantastic definition of what mental health is: someone who is able to contribute to the society and, you know, also carry on with the pressure of life. But in a layman's understanding, can you like break down what mental health is, like for those who are still wondering? But some people maybe didn't get the definition. You know, in a layman's, we saw the issues with Naomi Osaka at some point, the tennis player in the WTA, who was facing mental health challenges. She was always getting, you know, anxiety when she faced the press. Every time she faced the press, maybe the questions put a burden on her. You know, that's like an example of, you know, I'm sure that's like an example of mental health challenge. So like in the layman's understanding, for those who didn't get the first definition.
All right, that's fine. Now this is it. All right. Do we all deal with pressures of life? Yes, we do. Okay. And so all of that is in the definition already. Now, when you play tennis at the international level, you're expected to do a press conference almost immediately after you play the game. So if you lose a game that you think or you prepare to win, and you have to face the press immediately, you could have some pressure. You could be dealing with depression. Now, there are various forms of mental health challenges. Depression is one of that. Anxiety is another of them. You know, there are different forms. Before we go to personality disorders like dementia and schizophrenia, that's a common insanity, you know, that almost everybody knows as madness in the Nigerian language. You know, but anxiety and depression, and sometimes even eating disorders are all mental health challenges, you know. So you just really play a game, you're not happy, you lost the game, and then you have to face the press immediately. You might want to say, maybe this is not the best time. Maybe I need a few moments alone. Maybe I need to speak to my coach, who will provide the insight and the encouragement that is needed to take care of that mental health challenge at that particular point in time, you know, before facing the press. So I think that was Naomi Osaka's problem. Now, hold on. In the definition of mental health, we talked about awareness of self and being able to deal with pressure and also being able to contribute productively and fruitfully. Now, you know Naomi Osaka. First time Naomi Osaka won the US Open, Serena Williams, greatest of all time, a lot of people say, actually stopped playing the game, was upset at the referee or at the umpire, and the match was called off. Now, that was a mental health challenge with Serena Williams. Why? She was anxious, she was depressed at that time. Now it's transient. So we must understand what mental health challenge is. Whatever stops you from doing what you otherwise have done, you know, for longer than is expected as normal pressures of life. I hope that this is a larger explanation, you know, than the initial one.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic one, Dr. T. Well, in Nigeria, we're not paying a lot of attention to mental health, and that has to be said. Nigeria reportedly is currently facing a global human rights emergency in mental health issues. What do you think we should do individually and collectively to improve you know, the mental health situation? I'll give you an example. You know, I'm sure I told you this earlier. I used to play sports semi-professionally. I used to play badminton here in Lagos State. And, you know, at some point the pressure was telling on me because I was playing badminton, I was going to school, and I was interning in the media industry at the same time. And it was so much pressure. And, you know, usually I beat everyone in training. And all of a sudden, I couldn't beat everyone anymore because I wasn't even going to training as regular as I should have. And you know, that started affecting my education as well. So it's a thing in Nigeria, but it looks like we're not paying a lot of attention to mental health issues. What should we do individually and collectively in our schools? Because we have lots of people who are involved in the HiFL or games, matches. who are watching this session now, what do you think we should do individually and collectively to maybe help curb the issues of mental health, which, you know, is really hitting incredible figures these days in Nigeria?
Well, when you think about mental health, the clinical definition or the things that affect the composition of mental health challenges in Nigeria being clinical depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, which are extremes of mood swings between mania and depression, schizophrenia, and all of that. You probably think that almost every Nigerian is dealing with one mental health challenge or the other. For starters. But then that's a natural stress. Those are natural stressors that are inherent living in Black Africa or Nigeria. Now, if a person is aware of self, can deal with that stress, can contribute productively to the society and fruitfully to society, you have triumphed over the basic mental health challenges, all right? But we have to look at it for young people, especially who do sports with your experience, for instance. We then say we need to build a bigger support structure that accommodates what is known today as the spectrum of mental health challenges that young people, and more than young people, the population of our society are dealing with. There are enough stressors in society that can make anybody in this society break down. So we must build a larger framework, of support systems. When Nigeria has no social security structure, where a lot of people wake up in the morning and have nothing to do and do not know where the next meal is coming from, that person is not contributing productively or fruitfully to this society, isn't dealing with the stresses of life, and of course, may be aware of his or her potential, but cannot do anything about it. So Nigeria is bedeviled with the mental health challenge. Now, so if we start from the top, that what can we do as a government? Look, I'll surprise you. The Nigerian mental health law is more than 100 years old. It's the Lunacy Act of 1916. 1916, that is 106 years. It was reviewed in 1958, before independence, and something called the Lunacy Act or thereabouts, and yes, Lunacy Act in 1958. And in 2003 and 2013, the federal legislature actually passed new recommendations, new bills about mental health, but then they were not signed into law by the government of the day. In 2019, I'm aware of the fact that there were also public calls and public hearings about new mental health laws in the Nigerian constitution. But yet again, that did not even pass in the first place. The bill did not pass. So the government and people of Nigeria do not even understand or are not willing to incorporate that into the constitution or in the framework of Nigeria. So as it is, everybody is more or less on your own as it has to do with the law. All right?
So basically, what you're saying basically is our government don't care about mental health issues because the laws are not there to help.
I wouldn't say our government. I think all of us, look, I think a lot of people are hearing from a medical practitioner what mental health challenges are. And to a lot of people may be listening, and I'll be interested in hearing from our audience when we get to question and answer, their opinion and their views about this, But how many people? Nigeria has only 9 tertiary health institutions that are federal neuropsychiatric centers where they are specialists in mental health, working as consultants and registrars and all of that, But then that's about one specialist, one specialist mental health position in Nigeria to 700,000 Nigerians, So we don't have enough. Of every 10 Nigerian medical doctors you find of whatever level of specification or training, 8 of them are looking to move abroad. So that's the challenge we've got in Nigeria. So what can we do while we're dealing with that medical burden and medical practitioners, whether the doctors, the nurses, or dentists, or dietitians, everybody looking to move abroad, in something I call economic refugee situation. How about what we have in the rest of society? How about a coach who understands, or a mother who understands that this young person is going through a mental health challenge? All right, wait a minute. A baby can throw out his or her toys out of the pram in a tantrum. Okay, but that's not a mental health challenge. That's a fleeting. The baby just upset for a short period of time. All right. But when a young adult, can no longer cope with the regular activities of life, like a student, for instance, grades are falling, the person is anxious or depressed, and that's a mental health challenge. And the people should step in at that time. The university system, the lecturer, there should be a course advisor, the coach in the badminton place, there should be medical personnel available at every sporting ground or something, to intervene at that point. And you probably need at that point to be told very many times mental health challenges, the most basic of them and the most common of them really may not require drugs, may require reorientation, may require counseling, may require emotional support, may require a rearrangement in the structure and the system around such a person. But when you don't even know that this is a mental health challenge, or you are ignoring it, because that's the problem around here. We have no laws. What we've got is a 160-year-old thing. Meanwhile, and that law, only the Lunacy Act of 1958 or 1956 or thereabout, only permits a magistrate or a judge or a medical practitioner to arrest and detain anyone who is thought to have severe mental health challenges. Lunacy. It's actually the Lunacy Act. But there are that's the worst of the spectrum. That's the Z. There are all manners of things from the A before you get to the Z. Now that's what has to go into the new Mental Health Act, some of which I've spoken about in this answer. Until we bring the specialists on board, those who know about it on board, and it's not only doctors, it's nurses, it's social workers, it's psychologists, it's all of them, coming around. And of course, the government must provide a safety net, a social security structure, for all citizens, so that there are less pressures that our citizens can break down under its weight. That's what we have to do.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. T. That was such a fantastic take. And if I got one major thing, especially because I'm putting myself in the shoes of students watching this now. Of course, we have other people who are watching this and who have mental health issues aside from school. There's also mental health challenges in workplaces and all that. But one of the major points you touched on is our school system. Health facilities need to have some of these opportunities for students to be able to deal with mental health issues. They should be able to deal with mental health issues as regards to students in schools. We could have like a counseling session with a counselor. You could meet a psychiatrist, depends on the spectrum, like you said. And when you say spectrum, can you again just run through, before we move to our third question, can you run through the different spectrums? You talked about depression, you talked about lunacy, and then a few other spectrums. Well, I think one of the most common ones these days, you said lunacy is the extreme version, but one of the common ones in Nigeria and beyond has to be depression. And depression, it's one of the big spectrums of mental health. Let's touch on depression just for a few minutes. How can we tackle depression? Because it's something that a lot of young people and even older people are facing these days, and I know it's just one out of the many spectrums of mental health issues.
I think the spectrum is all that it contains. Spectrum is more like colors, different things in a rainbow. Depression is just one, anxiety, psychological distress. But then what's depression? A loss of interest in regular physical activity that causes a low mood and prevents a person from acting in the regular activities that person would otherwise have done without any challenges. And once a person is depressed, for instance, that person can no longer carry out what such a person may otherwise have done. Now, but that's just one. Anxiety, the sense of apprehension and worry. That happens to students, for instance. You're worried about your grades, you're worried about where the next meal is coming from, and all of that. So those are constituents, for instance. But of course, there could also be bipolar disorder. You know, there could be schizophrenia, that's known as madness. You know, there's dementia, there is attention hyperactivity, you know, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. You know, there's several parts of it. You know, but more often than not, for the purposes of this conversation, we are looking at what affects young people who are otherwise healthy, and then the more important ones might be anxiety and clinical depression. The worst part of clinical depression, there are 10 parts to clinical depression, for instance, and the worst part of it is suicidal ideation. You know, so these days, of course, you see on Twitter and social media, a lot of people are saying, please don't commit suicide and all of that. But it's not enough to say, don't commit suicide. It's not to say, how can we prevent people from getting to that border where suicide is the option that is coming into a person's mind, you know? And that's why I say we must look at it. And, you know, we first must get into our laws. We must then build a social security system. Once we do that, once every citizen can wake up in the morning, has a job or somewhere to go to earn a living and work at that, half of the pressures with mental health disorder has gone. This is for the average citizen. When you come to young people who do sports, the beauty is that sports actually is an antidepressant. And that I can tell anybody that for free. When you do sports, even your hormones, even your brain functions better. Your brain sends positive neurotransmitters into your brain because you are trying to engage and get better at something, you know. And so sports and exercise and physical activity is usually a huge plus, you know, for especially for recreational sportsmen. When it then comes to professional athletes, that's a different ballgame entirely because that's their job. And then when you feel you are not doing well at your job, you could have fleeting, temporary, you know, episodes of depression, anxiety, all of that. That also can be managed without medication. It's about having to build that security net, that reorientation, that knowledge that you need to say, calm down, you can do it, this other part is taken care of, and with some more time, you can get it better, you know.
All right, fantastic. Well, I'll be speaking to Dr. T. Akinbinu. Hope I got that correct now.
Well, whatever you pronounce it, I'm just fine.
Is it Akinbinu or Akinbinu?
It is Dr. Tunde Akinbinu.
Akinbinu. Oh, I'm you know, my Yoruba isn't so bad. All right.
No.
Yeah, just you know, I mean, it's been a fantastic session so far, and I'm sure some of you know, our viewers already you know, looking for all those unique questions because, like I said, you know, they have some unique questions that are more direct and more personal, and we're going to be taking them very soon. Also, I'll just say, you know, big thank you to again our sponsors, Stanbic IBTC, Bold, for refreshing this session, and of course, Hivasa, not forgetting Nuga. Well, the HiFL Masterclass series is live this year, and of course, we're starting with Dr. T. Akinbinu. Just to move on and just just carrying on from your last take on, you know, students, because we're focusing more on student athletes and how mental health could be a challenge. Student athletes have been reported to crumble under the pressure of chasing excellence in academics with sports. You know, like when you know, of course, we have a lot of student athletes these days, especially it's the reason why the HiFL is alive. I want to know though, what steps should they take to build mental health resilience and avoid this breakdown? You know, being that mentally strong, and even when they try and fail, you know, when they want to try again, they have a strong mentality and they tell themselves, I can do this. Or you know, they're not doing so well in school. Sometimes they're not doing so well in school, they're not doing so well in their sporting activity, and that could be a big you know, mental challenge for students. So how do you think you can, you know, strengthen their mental health basically?
Great. I think that first, Nigerian schools, and I don't want to mention specifics now, a number of schools that I know have dedicated budgets and their programs for sportsmen and academic activity. However, where the problem lies oftentimes is that it's often related to the Department of Human Kinesiology, or otherwise known as Physical and Health Education. So Africa's fastest man at some point in time was a student in the university, well, that I finished from for my graduate degree. And of course, my second, well, my degrees anyway. And he said, I think he was studying microbiology, Fasuba. I can't remember his first name, Olumide Fasuba, I'm not very sure right now. Africa's fastest man anyway. And his grades were so poor that he was told that he had to leave the Department of Microbiology, Faculty of Sciences, and move on to the Department of Physical Health Education. He didn't want it. One thing later, I think he probably dropped out of school. Right now, I think he's with the British Navy. All right, so that's what you're talking about. You know, how can otherwise good athletes cope with the rigors of academics and education without having mortgage one for the other? Now, this is something that the sports councils of universities have to sit down with the academic department, more like in the Senate and all that, and work out a template. Sometimes Nuga games or HiFL matches. I'll give you an example. The Federal University of Technology in Akure, a university in Ondo State, had played in the last HiFL competition, had to play a quarterfinal game against the University of Lagos. Second round of quarterfinal, I can't remember. And they had played the first leg, the University of in Accra or Lagos, I'm not sure, and had drawn. But for the second round of games, which came in maybe a week after Easter weekend last year, they couldn't travel. They were walked over. They didn't attend the game. Now, for some students who were willing or hoping to break it through to the international, scene by winning HiFL, that can cause some depression. The truth is, very few students are particularly proficient at academics and also at sports. Very few. People can have strengths at different things. So somebody is a very good sportsman, but an average student, that person should be able to finish with a degree. Look at the things that happen in colleges in the developed world. But here, very many university dons do not seem to have that perspective. I'll give you a personal example. Sometime in my time in university, the Faculty of Health Sciences, that I was a student of, won the inter-faculty games in the university. Well, a particular lecturer told all of us in class, you want football? Well, let's see how you pass my course. The larger percentage of the students that played in that competition and won that competition for the faculty were they either failed courses that year or were their grades were so bad that they were removed from medical school, and that was it. But it should be handled in a way where if a person is very good at badminton like you did, there should be an organizational plan. So I think that the sports councils in universities, which is usually headed by professors in many instances, have bigger discussions, with the university system to ensure that students can have the appropriate quality of life and balance, work life and academic balance, to be able to excel at academics and also to be able to, or at least be good enough to do their best at academics, whichever way the timetable and exams are structured, in order to see that their life as sportsmen do not suffer. It's an ongoing conversation that we have to keep on the front burner. And because one is not taken care of, the mental health of these athletes absolutely comes into question because they're causing depression and anxiety.
Yeah, because there's always that situation where you have to make a decision and say, oh, do I go for training or do I read for exams? I know I'm not doing so well. Okay, and I have to prepare for this event, this competition. Do I go and prepare or do I just read for this forthcoming exam? And I'd mentioned one school in particular. The school has a high intensive sports facility, University of Port Harcourt, Uniport. think that's one of the really good schools. I think Unilag is also doing it. And look, there are a lot of schools who are trying, but I think these schools, you know, have
university, private university in Abuja, done so well at Noga Games. Those are schools. The University of Port Harcourt is probably Nigeria's #1 university when it comes to sports. They have a high performance center for world athletics and all of that. But there's Nile University that came third or fourth at the Noga Games. There's something special happening in that school, and probably need to learn a lot from them.
All right. Well, Doctor, but we're just wrapping up now because I'm sure we're getting the questions coming in, and the team would drop the questions so we can get some of those unique questions. How important? From last question I asked you, basically what you're saying is structures. There has to be a good structure where athlete students who are involved in sport actively for the school or professionally, you know, maybe they need a special kind of treatment or a special kind of arrangement where you understand that these guys might not have the time to read a lot, like the students who have got the time to read.
No, you still have to study. You still have to study. I mean, I'm a public officer and I do sports and exercise medicine and all that. I remember at some point in time, I traveled abroad for the African combination and missed my brother's birthday wedding. And when I came back, my mother asked me and said, when you knew you were going to do sports and football, why did you make us waste all this money and energy training you in medical school? Point is, I didn't fail at that, and I didn't fail at this too. Do you understand? You are not going to study less. The grades are not going to be less, but the time is going to be arranged a little differently. All right? There's going to be a fine blend between the coaches, the athletes, and the academic system to ensure that there's an interwoven plan. Look, it's not going to be easy.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of schools. I mean, why we say this, there are a lot of schools who are not doing this, who are not, you know, infusing. Sports have become a major part of the fulcrum of life, and you know, I mean, for students who are participating at the the high institution football league, and also even from I think from the National Sports Festival, the last one, there were reports that some lecturers were going to deduct marks from students who went for the festival and all that. So I think schools really need to do more. Just to follow up from this, Dr. T, how important is mental health training for coaches and athletes? And what structure should be put in place to facilitate this? Coaches should be able to give some mental health support.
I think what I'm looking to doing here in this conversation, this is advocacy. What we're doing right now is enlightenment and advocacy. We are letting the society know what the problem is. In the last 1 year, there's been conversation between HiFL and the apex body of mental health, in Nigeria. And we're looking at doing a lot more research in that regard to have, real research, because research, funding, advocacy, these are some of the challenges that we've got in Nigeria. And I'm excited that HiFL is looking at that too, at developing young people. Once we have that, I don't know how many coaches are watching us right now, how many university lecturers and university staff are watching us. But of course, the beauty of all of this is that this is recorded, cannot always be watched at any time. The effluent, what we make out of all of this, can all add to the overall conversation. And people need to understand this, that while we request that young people acquire education in order to be able to build their critical thinking capacities and skills, we must also allow them to hone their natural capacities in sports or technical knowledge, whatever it is, so that we build the whole person and not just have an academic who is an absolutely theoretical person. So all of these things must be embedded in conversations at the universities, at the colleges of education, at secondary schools, so that, and of course, the organizers of games and sporting competition must also put the academic calendar into focus, so that A does not negate B and B does not negate A. We must have especially where we are not sure of the academic calendar in many universities. It may be difficult for organizers of sporting activities to plan that. So we need some stability. In addition to some stability, we must get the coaches, the university staff, the sports councils to understand that these students need to be, or these young people need to be optimally developed without losing one for the other. And I believe that that is the idea behind this conversation. I can only hope and sincerely do hope that the authorities would work a lot more. A few things are depressing, yes. We've never been able to have a mental health bill, passed, So those are challenges, but we keep the conversation going, and we will be successful at the end of the day.
All right, fantastic. Well, many thanks to you, Dr. T. Finally, what advice, and quickly, what advice do you have for sportsmen and women who are afraid to speak about their mental health challenge? That's become a real thing in today's world. People are going through different phases and just really can't, especially for, athletes, student athletes who, are going through different phases, but they don't come out and then they just implode. What advice?
And there are very many forms of it. You could be doing your best at some sport and you're just not getting it. You're doing your best and so you're getting worried. It's not even academics now. You just can't lift that weight beyond 95 kilograms. You've done everything your coach has said, but you're not doing. There could also be gambling, which is a big problem right now. That's a mental health challenge. There could be alcoholism, Sometimes the coaches could be taking advantage of a female athlete or a male athlete. There could be abuse by staff, by a coach, by a lecturer, by an administrator, or harassment, and even your family. There could be online abuse, with this day and time, with racism and all of that. The English footballers that lost the penalty kicks in the final against Italy, face all manners of racist abuse, So these are all, if you've got that, please speak up, talk to somebody. There are people around who understand what the challenges are and who can speak to you and provide for you the comfort, the understanding, the counseling, the support that you seek. And they are bound. All right. Maybe they may not be so large, but they exist in the sporting industry, they exist in the academia, they exist in the medical field, and never ever die in silence. If you are into sports or you are a volunteer at some sporting activity or something, please, if you've got a problem, talk to this. There's always a trained hand somewhere. There's a coach who understands. There are mental health support groups all over the internet, on Twitter. There are physiotherapists, there are clinical psychologists, there are doctors, there are nurses, and of course, there are specialists in mental health who are always willing and available to help if they are consulted. And with social media, we're not far away.
Oh, great. Thank you, Dr. T. Akinbinu. I know I murdered that name again. I just forgot the tone. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure, I've learned a lot just listening to you and just learning the different spectrums of mental health. And, of course, breaking down what mental health really is and, also advising for these structures to be made from a national level to school levels, and talking about having a merger especially for student athletes, and helping them to perform better and also perform better in athletics or in sports generally, and in schoolwork. Thank you. We're about to go on a break. We'll be taking the questions now for Dr. T. We'll take a few questions and then we'll wrap up. Remember, we're going to be doing giveaway. We're going to be giving out something special, okay? Before we end this session, we're going to ask a question and we're going to ask the attendees to, drop the answers across our social media handles at HiFL Nigeria. But before we go, I'd like to ask the attendees to use the Q&A session to drop their questions. We'll go on that quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with Dr. T, who is, of course, a doctor with the Nigerian Football Federation and who is our resource person today. This is, it's been fun doing this so far. So let's go on that break in the HiFL Masterclass Series 3.0 here on space. I think we're on space, right? Doctor, I think we're floating in space. Let's go on that break. Well, welcome back to the HiFL Masterclass Series 3.0 here And we've got Dr. T. Akinbinu. I'm Chidiberi Angulo, your host for this year's edition. And so far, I've been talking about mental health and sport. And Dr. T have just been breaking it down and, making it easy to understand. And he's been talking about structures in our schools to support mental health for student athletes. And also he's been talking about, on a national level, reviewing the bill to help, make mental health conversations stronger and to help mental health victims. And it's been also talking about creating a nice, a nice merger between schoolwork and sports work for student athletes in different institutions, and it's been encouraging different schools to do that, and that way it could help and also set up structures in their schools to help students when faced with mental health challenges. Thank you, Dr. T. Dr. T works with the Nigerian Football Federation. It's a pleasure to have such a big fish again in this year's edition of HiFL Masterclass Series 3.0. So it's time to take the questions. So Dr. T, I'm just going to take a look at some of the questions we are getting. We're getting a number of questions here from the viewers, our viewers as well, following the series. Someone says, great to be here. Thank you, Shehu. This one says, good evening, Chidi and Dr. T. Ernesto from Port Harcourt. In 2019, I acted as a media officer for River State University football team, RSU. Dolphins at that year. HiFL competition, and I know what those students. One of our games fell during the school exams, and the players missed those papers. Bro, some of them met with lecturers to have theirs later. God really helped me. Doctor, what can one do in a situation where your school don't directly support the school team? I think that's just down to what Doctor said earlier. The school has to have a system that understands that we have student athletes. We need to take sports seriously. So how can we? We can't judge them with those who are not in the national team, in the school's team. So, but Doc, just for you to shed a few more light on this, because I've seen situations where students go to compete in either a national events or a school event, and when they come back, maybe they miss a test or miss an exam, and the lecturer is not in the mood to hear anything. Again, I think it goes down to what you said, structure in the school, major.
Absolutely. I had my first and second degrees at Babatunde University, for instance, and of course, because I'm HiFL, I definitely don't have a special university, but then that's my alma mater. And I know, for instance, that that structure exists in some way at HiFL. I know that structure exists in some way at Uniport, where my Nigerian role model, Professor Ken Anugweje, Nigeria's only professor of sports and exercise medicine.
He's a great man. I know him.
Yeah. Where the sport and the athlete are known and registered with the University Sports Council, there can be interaction between the University Sports Council and the department on behalf of the student. I know that there's also been a lot of conversation with NUGA and the technical director of NUGA about some of these things to ensure that athletes can do well, student athletes can do well at their sporting activities without necessarily putting their education at risk. But then, where we cannot plan, where there's no stability in the university calendar, as we currently have, there can be such challenges. For HiFL, each team registers 30 players, not 20, in order to cater for instances where some players are otherwise engaged and will not be able to present at games or thereabout. Where you have 30 players registered, you should be able to provide a team of 11 and 3 or 5 substitutes per unit time. It's about planning, it's about organization, and it's about universities knowing and putting in structures. If you don't, look, for me as a physician, if you don't tell me early enough, you just come and tell me you're not going to come to work, I may not be willing to give you that freedom of work. But you planned it out, you made it clear, I can accommodate my schedule from the beginning of the semester, it's a little easier. So that's why I say there has to be a synergy, not a sense of entitlement from one party over the other. It's got to be
a break. Is an issue of breaking communication, and there's no synergy, like you just said, in that regard. Thank you, Dr. T. This one is coming from someone who's who's of course who's been with students, who's also teacher student in the past. It says students athletes tend to fail in school because of sport activities, missing classes because of training and all that, and this leads to depression. What advice do you have for schools to reduce this? Because the student goes for training or goes for, just like what I said, goes for a competition and then misses class and then falls into depression. And that's also a mental health issue.
All right. The name I was trying to remember earlier on, Africa's fastest man, was a student that I knew in my university. Olusola, you must be able to plan. Today I play recreational tennis. I wish to have played it when I was in university, but I was studying medicine. So I decided to prioritize one over the other. Maybe I would never have gone on to become anybody like Rafael Nadal, You must prioritize. You must know what you are good at. The truth is that as a good student athlete, you may get educational scholarships abroad where the situation is better, organization is better, facilities and support, social security nets, safety nets are available. I know there are universities, I know there are secondary schools like one at Wasimiori in Ogun State that is run by Chief Shegun Odegbami, for instance, where students can win educational scholarships abroad. I know there's Postla Academy in Abuja. I know that's secondary school. I know there is Carl School or something in Abia State, Umahia, for instance. It exists. You first must prioritize. What are you good at? Now, the fact that you are good at something does not mean that you must fail at something else. I'm a doctor. I'm a public health physician. I don't, because I want to study sports and exercise medicine that is barely available in Nigeria, decide not to study public health, decide not to study occupational health. Do you understand? You must prioritize first. Don't have that sense of entitlement that you will fail at academics because you are putting all your energy into sports. No, never presume that. The standard of education is never going to reduce. You must prioritize. You must be able to, you got 24 hours in a day. You need 8 hours or thereabout to rest. So you prioritize academics and prioritize sports and training and all that. And you've got to really, look, the best of sportsmen have a lot of discipline and a lot of dedication. It's the exact same thing that academics request of you. All right? So you must be able to marshal your strength conveniently to both. All right? The best sportsmen, for instance, are not necessarily professors, but it doesn't mean you cannot become a professor. You just need to just get over the line. And some people do get beyond the line, even while doing sports. If I do remember, there used to be a medical student, a graduate. I mean, she finished when I was in my first year or something, who was playing badminton, your badminton, for the school team. They are not exactly conflicting. You must look, if you cannot get it right as a young student, you probably will miss your step and be unable to contribute fruitfully and productively in the main society. Because your entire career as a sportsman is probably about 50 years as an active sportsman. After that, your education and your critical thinking capacity is what will carry you on for the rest of life. So don't mortgage one for the other. All right, it requires a lot of tact and a lot of discipline.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. That question though was coming from someone who I respect as well, Adetola Bade Kale, producer with Super Sports. This one is a unique question, Dr. T, and as we're just about to wrap up, this one says, "Good evening, doctor. What more can one do as a parent to support his or her child in sports in Nigeria?"
Okay, all right. Well, I'll tell you this. My parents, for free, had their business place just opposite the stadium in a town where I grew. And trust me, they never allowed me to go there twice. You just couldn't ever go there, except maybe it was Children's Day. Look, their business outlet was exactly opposite the stadium. So when I became a doctor and then I do all of these things, Mr. Man, or Dr. Man, whatever it is, when you knew that this was well, I said, Mama, I gave you what you wanted, and I have what I wanted. So I won in two ends. You know, I don't blame her. I don't blame them. Because very many times young people are not, they don't have the experience, they're not aware of what the future holds, and parents have to guide. So the first thing is never ever mortgage education. Never ever take the shortcut. The shortcut might be miracle center, might be examination malpractice. Never ever do that. Look, I could get this notice to come and do this and do it effortlessly. Not because the knowledge base is there already. It doesn't mean that if I have to treat somebody who collapses there, as soon as this ends, I wouldn't do it. Do you understand? So basically, that's what it is. Parents need to encourage their children, especially when they're much younger, to do your best when you are young, so that you can balance it out when you get to the more demanding periods where you are moving from recreational into semi-professional and professional sports. Of course, some of the things parents need to do is also feeding. Feeding, very important for there's something called growth sport. If a malnourished child will never do as good, will never grow as tall, or may never grow as tall as necessary for the particular sport, So parents need to encourage, parents need to support, parents need to nourish. I mean, maybe feed is not the word, but provide adequate nutrition, adequate mental support, adequate protection, psychological support, and all of that while the children are growing up. Usually, by the time the child is 18, it's already in tertiary institution, and then the rest of the society takes it on from there. The school system, the sporting system, and all of that.
Yeah. Well, many thanks to you, and just what you said reminds me a lot of I think King James, the movie about Serena Williams and how their father protected them, like an eagle protecting her egg, and told everyone that these girls are going to be world beaters. They actually made a movie recently about it. I think it's called King James, something like
King
that.
Richard.
Yeah, and
Richard.
King Richard. Yeah.
Movie.
Yeah, and he just told us. And if you go online, if you go on YouTube, you can still find pictures of you can still find pictures of videos of how the father protected them and helped them grow. So it's really all about protecting your kid and helping them achieve. When you see that passion in them, and when you see that they can achieve that, just guiding and helping them. Just finally, Dr. T, just to correct you, that question wasn't from Tola. That question wasn't Tola's question, as I'm being corrected. Just finally, do we have enough athletes in Nigeria coming forward to expose abuses and harassment? I don't think a lot of students are coming out to do that. Well, when you say, when a person says expose abuses and harassment, I think we're focusing more on mental health. I think what you mean is mental health issues. And the person asks, is the system designed to encourage them to speak out about their mental health challenge? I think we should focus on the system being designed to. This question is coming from TBJ, asking.
Well, Timmy, I can't give a specific answer in that regard. I know that we are looking to have a research into this so that we can be able to give specific answers. Hopefully, we can get that research over the line before Masterclass 4.0, and we'll be able to give thoroughly scientific answers to that. But I do know that matters of mental health are common in the Nigerian space. People do not believe some of these things. It's difficult to expose abuse, especially from coaches, lecturers, and all of that. It's difficult to know who to complain to, who to tell what, the kind of support you get. But hopefully, we'll be able to have a couple of papers in that regard before Masterclass 4.0. And probably we'll be talking on mental health with probably some of the biggest mental health practitioners in Nigeria, hopefully at Masterclass 4.0. So I hope we'll have a big answer. Stay tuned with us for Masterclass 4.0 next year. God sparing all of our lives, and hopefully you get that question answered in the best of ways.
Well, all right. Well, Dr. T, it's been such a resourceful time with you. I think we just spent just about an hour because we started around 5:17. So there or thereabouts. And well, if you leave me, we could just go on and on. Thank you for all your questions. Those who have participated on the Q&A section, and those who are pretty much okay and enjoying this session. Thank you as well. Dr. Akinbinu, thank you as well, and thank you for sharing. And maybe you could have been our JJ coach if you went to play football. But you're winning. You're being our JJ from a health angle, and we do appreciate with the Nigeria Football Federation. So thank you. We said we're going to ask a question. And it's a trivia, really. So for those who are watching, we're going to give out a jersey. You can find the HiFL platform is HiFL Nigeria on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. What the trivia today is, so we're going to do a special giveaway. We're giving out a jersey, actually, an original authentic jersey from HiFL. Who won the Golden Boots Award in the 2018 HiFL season? Who won the Golden Boot Award in the 2018 HiFL season? Go there and drop your answer. You can also drop the name, school team, and number of goals scored. Name, school team, and number of goals scored. Who won the Golden Boot Award in the 2018 HiFL season? Go either on our Facebook page, HiFL Nigeria on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram, and drop the correct answers. You can use the hashtag HiFL Masterclass 3.0, and yes, just tell us who won, and you can just get an authentic jersey from HiFL. So, Dr. T. Akinbinu, thank you so much, and yeah, we hope to see you in Master Series 4.0. It's been such a resourceful time with you.
You're welcome always.
Thank you. Tomorrow, the Master Series continues here with HiFL. Tomorrow we'll be having Obina Luis Asonia. He's the Business Development Manager at Stanbic IBTC. And tomorrow we'll be speaking on financial formation for life. So it's not enough to play sports. It's also smart to know, how to, arrange yourself for the rainy days. Because even as a sport person, just like Dr. T said, you have just about 15 years to play, to play sports. When you go pro, depending on when you go pro. So, sport people don't have a lot of time. You just have 10, 15 years to play. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about financial formation for life. And we're going to be having Obina Luis Asonyi, Business Development Manager at Stanbic IBTC, join us on the HiFL Masterclass Series 3.0. Thank you for everyone who is working at the back end to make sure, today was a success. So 1 day to go, we've got 4 more to go, 4 days of exciting, educative resources and content here on the HiFL Masterclass Series. Thank you again, Dr. T. I'm Chidibere Anguru, and you can follow HiFL across all socials, HiFL Nigeria on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram, and make sure you get involved and get the conversation going. We're dropping content as we go by, and we'll take it all the way to Friday. Thank you, and bye for now.